Hello there, YouTube. Devin here again, and today we have the historical Canadian composite helmet video. Now, I've done this twice before for the Germans, and not the Germans. Sorry, my bad. Totally butchered it right off the start. The British and the Americans. Now we're going to look at the Canadians here. Now, a lot of you fellow collectors right off the bat are going to say, well, this isn't a composite helmet. And you're right, it's an M1 helmet. But I consider part of the M1 helmet to be a composite helmet, and it's the liner. Now, the liner is meant to be used standalone, and you can see many pictures, even from its conception, of the M1 helmet liner being used as a standalone helmet. And when you don't necessarily need the big, heavy steel outer protection one, the inner one functions about the same as a construction helmet. It's minor bump protection and stuff like that. And the Canadians used, they replaced all of their turtle helmets, well, their British World War II turtle helmets and their World War II Brodie helmets in the 70s with M1s from US stock. They're all Vietnam configuration M1s. Recently, they sold a ton of them off too, and I've been seeing people saying selling the Canadian ones as authentic issued Vietnam ones, and that's not true. So be very, very careful when you're purchasing one, because right behind the World War II ones, the Vietnam ones are the most popular, and they could fetch a really, really high price if they can be authenticated as actual Vietnam issued helmets. So a lot of people are selling these Canadian now surplus ones as actual Vietnam issued helmets. So just be wary. This one here is just a triple bale because I like it more, the shell. It is a Canadian liner though. It's the late, very, very late Kevlar one, which it's a thin Kevlar, so it's not as thick as like an actual ballistic helmet. It's probably a third as thick as an ACH or a PASGAT, but it's going to offer more bump protection and better deformation patterns than the older ones, like fiberglass or the compressed cotton ones. It's going to offer a better deformation pattern than those ones, so that's why they upgraded to the Kevlar versions. But other than that, it's not going to do any better at stopping a bullet alone or anything like that. And it does add some weight, actually, because Kevlar is a lot denser and heavier than the fiberglass ones. So just something cool I thought you guys would like. So from that, though, in the 90s, the Canadians held a whole bunch of helmet trials and stuff like that, and they tested a whole bunch of helmets. The Orlite, the Mark VI, the American PASGAT, a bunch of different stuff. They really, really liked a lot of features and stuff like that, but they really couldn't pick just one or the other to choose, so they took a whole big mashup of a bunch of other ones. And they got together with Bardet, which is one company that was in the helmet trials, and Bardet was like, we can make one locally for you, which is ultimately why the Canadians decided to go with Bardet. Mostly, I think, is because of a national pride thing, whereas a lot of militaries do that. They might not necessarily take the best thing if they can get something made locally, because it's a whole national pride thing and funding and yada. There's a whole bunch of stuff in it, and it's happened a lot of times historically, such as with firearms and body armor and uniforms and the whole jazz. Pretty much everything the military can get, they want to get it locally. That's why the U.S. has the Berry Amendment and stuff like that. But this is the Bardet helmet, and this is a size medium Bardet helmet. It is a Gen 1 Bardet. As you can see by the liner, it has the foam hockey pad liner pretty much, whereas later they would have went to a PASGAT style suspension helmet, and the PASGAT will be shown in this video as well because they were used by Canadians. But it has a very complicated chin strap and assembly and stuff like that. As you can see, it's a lot of metal D-rings and a lot of snaps and extra fabric and loops and everything like that. But it's actually a pretty comfortable helmet. It does get some hot spots along with the pads and stuff like that, and which is why they eventually went to the suspension one as well. And the fact that these tended to tear out pretty easy. The foam just wasn't durable enough for battlefield conditions. This one I got brand new, actually. It's unused, and it's got a Gen 1 liner, and it's the paratrooper variation, or according to the tag from the Canadian government when this was demilled, it was rejected because it had some paint chips on it. It's a brand new helmet, it's just got some chip paint on the outside. So super, super glad to have this one, because it really should be in a museum. If you want to see more of this helmet, want to see it without the cover and stuff like that, because in these historical comparison videos, I do them as they would have been used. So if you want to see this without its cover, or you want some more historical information and stuff like that, I have it in my helmet playlist. If you want to go back and rewatch that and learn some of the stuff about it, feel free to go do that. But eventually the Bardet had some problems and stuff like that, and it had some conundrums, and so the Canadians went back to the drawing board, and they came to CGF Gallet, and they wanted to go back to their original 90s tests and mash together all the features they like from the PASGAT and the French F2 helmet and the Orlite and all this other stuff, and eventually they came to the conclusion like this, and they invented the CG634. Now, the CG634 is still the current issue helmet of the Canadian Forces. It's very reminiscent of an ACH. It came out in the early to mid-90s. I think 94 was when they started being mass fielded. So it was way ahead of its time. This is back when the U.S. was still using the PASGAT. Had this awesome liner, which is very reminiscent of a French F2, which is also in this playlist because they were used by Canadians to a limited extent in some peacekeeping missions. So here you can see the liner and the chin strap. Now, these older ones, all right, are going to have a kind of rougher Kevlar on the inside. Well, not Kevlar. These are made out of Spectra, but it's basically Kevlar. And it'll have a black rubber rim, as you can see here. This black rubber rim, if you could hear that squeaking, as well as a lack of... there's a little foam pad on the new MSA ones that cover up the screw, so you don't accidentally poke yourself on the screw or anything like that. But other than that, the only difference was in the covers. And the cover here is a much thicker fabric than the later ones, and it's the older Gen 1 version of CADPAT. As you can see, it's kind of blurred edged. There's not really hard lines on it. And there is a wider dispersion. It's a little bit brighter green overall than the later ones. But these were made by CGF Gallet, which is a subsection of Gallet of France. These are made in Canada. CGF Gallet is in Canada. And in recent years, they were bought out in the 2000s. They were bought out by MSA, which is an American helmet manufacturer who manufactures a lot of safety equipment, construction and logger helmets, and ACHs for the United States Army, Navy, and Air Force. So they bought out CGF Gallet, changed the design a little bit to be more like the ACH. Still the same shape, still the same material, but it's got a little bit more modern features on it and stuff like that. A few changes aesthetically, mostly, but that's it. So we'll bring that one up here now. Actually, well, wait, because before MSA was bought out, CGF Gallet was bought out by MSA. The Canadians were on peacekeeping missions in Yugoslavia, where they were giving American PASGAT vests and American PASGAT helmets. Now, this is an American PASGAT helmet. I'm going to apologize in advance because it doesn't have a PASGAT liner in it. I took it out and replaced it with the Marine Corps Gen 1 lightweight helmet liner, which is pretty much just an upgraded PASGAT liner. It's pretty much the same thing, except now it's synthetic leather instead of actual leather, and it has this mesh crown instead of the normal webbing strips with the donut ring, because it's just more comfortable. But this is an actual PASGAT helmet. Just to prove it to you, you could see the, I don't know if you can, oh, there it is, if I get this out of the way. The Unicore tag there, it's an actual PASGAT. It's a lot thicker than the Marine Corps lightweight helmet. I just like the suspension better because it's a lot more comfortable. I don't have the helmet cover locked in, but this is the helmet cover they would have used. And they used these during the Yugoslav Civil War when they were down there on peacekeeping missions. Just the standard American PASGAT, if you want to learn more about that. I have a playlist. I have a PASGAT is featured in a bunch of my helmet videos. You could go check those out if you would like to learn more history and use and some technical specs and stuff like that on the PASGAT. So, but then after that, the Canadians went back. The Canadian Standard Army was still using the CG634, but those on the peacekeeping missions, it was a lot easier for the U.S. to just supply them rather than the Canadians, because there was very few Canadians over there, and the U.S. Was moving so many supplies anyways, so they're like, might as well share. So here is the CG634 in its most current configuration. Well, I shouldn't say most current configuration, because there was one that was one newer model than this, but it was later redacted and went back to this model, and we'll cover that here. And we have the CG634. This has the desert CAD-PAT cover on it. As you can see, there's more harder edges. It's not quite as blurred. We'll get that up here. You see this, how there's kind of blurred or rounder edges on this, and these are more hard lines. As you can see, they're more square. Just for that comparison, has the KDEX helmet mount on it, the brown cat eyes. This, to spot the Gen 2 CG634 from the Gen 1 CG634, is it will have a green rim on it rather than the black rubber rim, and it's not rubber anymore, it's kind of plastic. And this little pad right here, if you can see that, this little pad that covers up the screw, that's in there. Otherwise, there isn't much of a difference to these helmets. They weigh the same, they're made out of the same material. Just a little bit different. The tag on them, though, is inside the ears underneath the cover here, and this one will say MSA on it, whereas the older ones will say CGF Gallet, and it'll say it in both English and French, and these are both medium, which would say moyen in French and stuff like that and everything. So we'll move on to our next helmet. Now that helmet was used through Iraq and Afghanistan and pretty much everywhere else the Canadians went. Some early troops sent to Afghanistan and stuff like that, before the Canadians had supplies figured out, were actually using French helmets. And now, I doubted this for a very, very long time, all right, until somebody showed me a picture, and I'm sorry I don't have the picture, but this is a French F2 helmet with a CAD-PAT cover, with a KDEX helmet mount, and it's a PASGAT shell basically with what's pretty much a CG634 liner. But it's the French F2 liner, and it has a French F1 chin strap. Now, this came with the French F2 chin strap, but I like the F1 chin strap better, and basically the only difference between the F1 and the F2 chin strap is the F1 chin strap has these cool snaps to cover it, whereas the F2 has a big, long, little D-ring here and a big, long piece of Velcro that would go through the D-ring and come back around on top of the chin strap, which I just don't like. I'd rather have the snaps than the Velcro, but other than that, it's pretty much the same thing. Leather chin cup and stuff like that, and I've seen some Canadians, or what appeared to be Canadians, they were wearing CAD-PAT and stuff like that, using this helmet, which gave me a little bit of weird feelings, because some guy swore up and down, and finally he was able to prove it to me. Very, very limited numbers, though. I don't know if they were special forces, or if it was just something they thought it was funny, and they were taking a picture, sharing stuff like that, but I wouldn't think that a CAD-PAT cover would fit on a PASGAT, and it turns out there was actual PASGAT CAD-PAT covers made, field made for the most part. This is an aftermarket Chinese one, as you can tell, because the colors are a little bit off, but they were used to an extent, a very limited extent, I think, until supplies came about. And because this helmet was probably used because there's a lot of problems with the CG634 chin strap and suspension, as far as it cutting into your forehead and the chin strap just adjusting on the fly to the point where the helmet can fall down over your eyes and block your vision, or rotate and block your hearing and just interfere with lots of your body armor and weapon systems and stuff like that. So that's why I'm guessing this was used for a little while. So because people didn't have the know-how or the time to modify the CG634 to make it better, which is going to bring us into our next version of the CG634, which is a kind of weird one. Now, this isn't a cover it would have been issued with, but again, it has the KDEX helmet mount. This is just, I have a whole bunch of KDEX helmet mounts because I got a whole bunch of them in a shipment, and I don't have one of the weird Canadian mounts that has the metal ring and the two tails that come down with the hooks. I'd very much like to get one of those if any of you guys have them. But this is a version of the CG634 that's no longer made, but it was made to deal with the suspension and chin strap problems. It's basically a CG634 shell that was gutted and filled with ACH pads. So as you can see here, it still has a CG634 chin strap, but it has ACH pads in it. Which kind of helped as far as logistics goes, because they could just get these from the United States. It's a lot easier for troops in the field to maintain and repair, because you could just change the pads rather than having to try to sew the chin strap and that plastic ring and everything and all the other complicated pieces that could go wrong in the CG634 suspension. This is a lot easier to maintain and take care of. So I just threw a reversible M81 and M94 helmet cover on it. No foliage loops or anything, just what would have a cover. But other than that, this helmet was tested for a little while. It was found that it wasn't really worth it to convert a whole bunch of CG634s to this. The Canadians pulled out of Afghanistan in 2014. This helmet got tossed to the wayside. It was tested. It was issued. It was used for a little bit. A lot of soldiers were purchasing stuff like this anyways, purchasing ACHs to use anyways, just with CAD-PAT covers. Because it was a better helmet overall than the CG634. It was just the CG634 was too much to maintain in a battlefield environment over an ACH. So that's why the Canadian government went to test this version of the CG634, found out it wasn't really worth it. The war was coming to an end anyways, and they ended up going all the way back to just the regular old CG634, and this is how the CG634 is currently issued, except without the desert cover. So hopefully you guys like this video. This is kind of a quick little comparison. I didn't want to get too long. All these helmets have their own history and stuff like that. If you want to go check them out in their own videos, in their own in the helmet playlist. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you guys like this video and you subscribe if you like this sort of thing. I'd very much like you to get some user experience. If you have any user experience with the CG634, or if you just think it's cool, or something like that, please throw that in the comments. I've done my best to do research on these things, but I am able to make mistakes as well. So thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.